My heart's only beating like 25%, but as long as I stay focused and stay on the right path, then everything will be all right. So thank you for all your prayers.
Imagine standing in the front row of the Shreveport Municipal Auditorium on Valentine's Day, waiting for a night of soulful R&B hits. Ray J walks out. The energy is electric, but as the stage lights hit his face, the crowd gasps in collective shock. There is a dark red liquid unmistakably resembling blood streaming from behind his sunglasses, staining his cheek. He doesn't wipe it away. He doesn't acknowledge it. He just keeps singing one wish, like his life depends on it, and in reality it just might. Then in a moment that sent shockwaves across social media, Ray unzips his bright orange jumpsuit to reveal something far more terrifying than any stage prop. A medical heart monitor strapped firmly to his bare chest. This wasn't a planned part of the performance. It was a live broadcast of a body in active medical distress. Just 5 weeks ago, doctors delivered a diagnosis that would shatter anyone's world. His heart is functioning at a staggering 25% capacity. With reports claiming he's been told 2027 is a wrap, the world is watching a man race against his own pulse. Is this Ray J's final curtain call, or a dangerous gamble for one last moment in the spotlight? The energy inside the Shreveport Municipal Auditorium on February 14th, 2026, was supposed to be nothing but romance and R&B nostalgia. We're talking about an intimate setting, a place where the legends of the game come to give their fans a night they'll never forget. The lineup for Kelly Price and Friends was a heavy-hitting roster of the artists who soundtracked every heartbreak and every high school slow dance of the last 20 years. You had Bobby V, Sammy 702, Jay Holiday, Sunshine Anderson, and Pleasure P. These are voices that define an era, but the name everyone was waiting for, the man who has spent nearly 30 years reinventing himself from a teen idol to a tech mogul, was William Ray Norwood Jr., the one and only Ray J. At 45 years old, Ray J isn't just a singer anymore. He's a cultural fixture, a man whose every move is usually calculated for maximum impact. But as the doors opened at 7 o'clock and the crowd filtered in, nobody could have predicted that they were about to witness a performance that felt less like a concert and more like a public medical emergency. When Ray J finally stepped out onto that stage, he was a vibrant flash of color in a bright orange jumpsuit and his signature dark sunglasses. To the casual observer in the back of the room, he looked like the same high-energy showman he's always been. He was smiling, he was moving with that familiar confidence, and he was leaning into the intimacy of the room, connecting with fans who had paid good money to see a legend in his element. But for those in the front rows, the illusion of a normal concert began to shatter within the first few minutes of his set. As the stage lights caught the side of his face, the cameras started rolling, not just for the memories, but out of a sudden, visceral sense of alarm. Multiple fan-recorded videos, which would soon ignite a firestorm across TikTok and Instagram, captured a dark red liquid unmistakably resembling blood dripping from beneath his sunglasses. It wasn't a small dot or a smudge. It was a persistent, visible streak running down the right side of his cheek, glistening under the hot Shreveport spotlights. The most chilling part of the entire scene wasn't just the blood itself, but Ray J's reaction to it, or rather, his complete lack of one. As he performed his catalog of R&B staples, including the timeless classic One Wish, he acted as though his face was perfectly clean. He leaned in to hand out red roses to the women in the front rows, smiling and chatting with the audience, all while that red streak continued its slow descent down his face. In at least one viral clip, you can see him briefly adjust his sunglasses, and for a split second, the source becomes clear. The liquid appeared to be originating directly from the eye area. He didn't reach for a towel. He didn't signal to a stagehand. He didn't even acknowledge that anything was wrong. He just kept singing, his voice carrying the weight of a man who knew he was being watched by thousands, both in the room and through the digital lens of the internet. It was a display of showmanship that bordered on the surreal, leaving the audience caught between the joy of the music and the growing dread of what they were actually seeing. But the night had one more shock in store, a moment that would transition the conversation from what is on his face to, is he actually dying? Midway through his set, in a move that felt both deliberate and defiant, Ray J unzipped the top of his orange jumpsuit. As the fabric fell away, it exposed his bare chest, but the focus wasn't on his physique. There, strapped to the upper left side of his torso, was a prominent medical patch, a device widely identified by fans and major media outlets like Complex and Yahoo as a heart monitor, likely a Holter monitor used for continuous cardiac tracking. This wasn't something he was trying to hide. He revealed it intentionally, continuing to sing his heart out while the device sat there as a silent, mechanical witness to his body's internal struggle. For the fans watching, the image was haunting. Here was a man performing high-energy choreography, hitting notes that require intense physical exertion, all while a machine was literally recording whether or not his heart was about to fail in real time. The context for this reveal had actually been set hours before the show started. Ray J had taken to Facebook to acknowledge the device directly, writing a post that, in hindsight, feels more like a confession than a status update. He told his followers that he had a heart monitor attached to his chest but felt blessed to be outside with the people. At the time, it seemed like a message of resilience, a show-must-go-on attitude from a seasoned veteran. But as the footage from the concert began to circulate, that post took on a much darker tone. It was an admission that this performance wasn't just a gig, it was a gamble. Ray J was telling the world that his heart was being monitored for life-threatening irregularities, and he was choosing to step onto a stage and push his body to the limit anyway. Within hours of the final curtain call, the internet exploded. This wasn't a gradual trend. It was an overnight digital wildfire. Millions of views accumulated as "Pray for Ray J" began to trend across X and TikTok. The reaction was split down the middle, creating a digital battlefield of opinions. On one side, you had the overwhelming majority who were genuinely terrified for his life. They saw a 45-year-old man bleeding from his eye with a cardiac monitor strapped to his chest and saw a cry for help. Medical professionals, including nurses who were watching the live streams, began to weigh in with terrifying theories. Some suggested the eye bleeding could be a sign of end-stage liver complications like cirrhosis, while others pointed to vascular damage caused by chronic, dangerously high blood pressure. Though none of this was confirmed by his team, the sheer visual evidence was enough to convince many that Ray J was standing on the edge of a medical cliff. Then there was the second camp, the skeptics. Because this is Ray J, a man who has mastered the art of the viral moment for decades, some observers couldn't help but wonder if this was all a highly sophisticated piece of performance art. Was the blood fake? Was it a theatrical provocation designed to generate the exact media explosion it produced? Some called it a health scare flex, arguing that the timing was too cinematic to be real. They pointed to the fact that Ray J didn't collapse on stage. He didn't need emergency medical attention after the show. In fact, he reportedly told fans afterward that he was perfectly fine, with no visible blood remaining on his face by the time he reached the backstage area. For the skeptics, his ability to finish an hour-long set without a single stumble was proof that the narrative didn't add up. They argued that a man with a heart functioning at only 25%, the figure Ray J himself had claimed, couldn't possibly hand out roses and sing ballads for an hour without his body giving out. But while the blood on his face could be debated, the heart monitor and the medical history leading up to it could not. The Shreveport performance didn't happen in a vacuum. It was the culmination of a 5-week downward spiral that began in a Las Vegas hospital room in early January. That's where the 25% heart function figure first emerged and where the image of Ray J as an invincible mogul first began to crumble. The chest patch was a direct link to a diagnosis of severe heart failure, a reality that involves 8 different medications, strict bed rest, and a prognosis that mentioned the year 2027 as a potential wrap. As of mid-February, Ray J hasn't addressed the specifics of the Shreveport visuals. He hasn't explained the blood or the choice to perform under those conditions. He's been posting on social media as if it's business as usual, but the world can't look away. The gap between his legendary ambition and his body's actual capacity is narrowing every single day. And the footage from that Valentine's Day stage has now become the defining image of a man who seems determined to go out with a bang, even if it's his last. To understand how we got to that blood-stained stage in Shreveport, we have to go back to the moment the clock truly started ticking. It was January 6th, 2026, when the first reports hit the wire. TMZ broke the news that Ray J had been rushed to a hospital in Las Vegas. Initially, the word was severe pneumonia and heart pains, but the images that followed were what really shook the fans. We weren't just reading a headline, we were seeing him. Viral footage showed Ray J lying in a hospital bed, looking smaller than we've ever seen him, connected to a maze of oxygen lines, IVs, and cardiac monitors. He was wearing a simple blue medical cap, his face drained of that usual Ray J spark, as doctors performed an echocardiogram right there in the room. This wasn't his first brush with death. Back in 2021, he had a terrifying bout with non-COVID pneumonia in Miami that he thought would be the end. But January 2026 was different. This wasn't just a lung infection. This was the moment his body finally presented the bill for decades of living life at 200 miles per hour. By late January, the hustle hadn't stopped, but the narrative had shifted from recovery to a fight for survival. In a series of raw, emotional Instagram live videos posted between January 25th and 28th, Ray J decided to stop the rumors and lay out the cold, hard facts. And the facts were devastating. He looked into the camera and told his followers that his heart was functioning at only 25% capacity. To put that into perspective for anyone who isn't a cardiologist, a healthy heart's ejection fraction, the amount of blood it pumps out with each beat, sits between 55 and 70%. When you hit 25%, you are in the danger zone of severe heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. Medically speaking, your heart isn't a pump anymore. It's a struggling muscle barely keeping the lights on. Ray didn't use clinical jargon, though. He used words that were much more haunting. He described one side of his heart as black and done. He spoke about it with a terrifying level of casualness, sandwiched between business updates, as if he was discussing a car engine that had finally given out after too many miles. He didn't blame bad luck or genetics either. In a moment of brutal honesty that you don't often see in the world of celebrity, Ray J pointed the finger squarely at himself. He talked about the height of his fame being fueled by a self-destructive cycle that would have leveled most people. We're talking about 4 to 5 bottles of alcohol every single day. We're talking about heavy substance use, including Adderall and other pills. All mixed into a relentless lifestyle of partying and never-ending work. He admitted he had felt invincible for far too long, and that the damage to his cardiovascular system was likely irreparable. The prognosis he shared with the world was enough to make anyone's blood run cold. He told his fans that 2027 was definitely a wrap for him, suggesting that his doctors had given him a timeline measured in months, not decades. This wasn't just a health update, it was a public reckoning with mortality. Major outlets like NBC News, People magazine, and Billboard all picked up the story, turning his private medical crisis into a global conversation about the cost of the fast lane. By the end of January, the medical reality became even more specific. In an interview with TMZ on the 29th, Ray J detailed the pharmaceutical cocktail keeping him alive. He was on 8 different medications. He specifically named Entresto, which is a powerhouse drug used to reduce cardiac strain, and Jardiance, a medication originally for diabetes that has become a gold standard for keeping heart failure patients out of the hospital. He was also on Lipitor for cholesterol, along with 5 other unnamed pills he had to take every single day. His doctors had ordered strict bed rest, no alcohol, no smoking, and 0 deviation from the plan. They were even preparing him for the possibility of a pacemaker or an implantable cardioverter defibrillator, a device that sits under the skin and shocks the heart back to life if it detects a fatal rhythm. For a man who built his brand on being the life of the party, being told your heart needs a computer to keep it beating is a heavy cross to carry. But through all the darkness, one person stepped up in a way that truly showcased the bond of the Norwood family, his sister, Brandy. We've known them as a duo for decades, from their reality shows to their music, but this was a different kind of collaboration. Ray J revealed with visible emotion that Brandy had stepped in to cover all of his medical and personal bills for the entirety of 2026. He called the gesture crazy, his voice trailing off as he tried to process the fact that his big sister was literally financing his fight to stay alive while he was bedridden. It wasn't just Brandy either. His parents, Sonia and Willie Norwood, were there for every doctor's visit, providing the kind of day-to-day care that a man in his condition desperately needs. The Los Angeles Times and USA Today both confirmed this family rally, painting a picture of a tight-knit unit trying to hold back the tide of a terminal diagnosis. Yet even in the middle of this life-altering crisis, the old Ray J, the one who thrives on chaos, couldn't help but peek through. During one of those high-stakes Instagram live sessions, where he was discussing his 25% heart function, something happened that became a viral moment in its own right. A woman named Sheila, who had been staying with him in the hospital, started playfully demonstrating some boxing moves she'd been learning. She jokingly struck him, and for a second, the celebrity mask fell off. Ray J didn't laugh it off. He had a visceral, genuine reaction of distress. He told her, "I can't work out. Don't ever hit me like that again." He explained that the minor impact had completely thrown off his equilibrium and disrupted his thought processing. To a healthy person, it was a playful tap. To a man whose heart is struggling to get enough oxygenated blood to his brain, it was a physical threat. He immediately said he needed to call his doctor and take his pills. It was a jarring reminder that beneath the social media posts and the business talk, Ray J was physically fragile in a way that was almost impossible to reconcile with the man we saw on stage just weeks later. He ended that stream by saying he was going upstairs to heal, but as we know now, the healing was about to take a back seat to one last, dangerous pursuit of the spotlight. To truly understand why the world is so gripped by this unfolding tragedy, you have to look at what Ray J built before his heart began to fail him. This isn't just a story about a celebrity getting sick. It's a story about a man who redefined what it meant to be a hustler in the modern age. For nearly 30 years, Ray J has been a permanent fixture in American entertainment, but he never stayed in one lane long enough for anyone to pin him down. He started as a child actor on The Sinbad Show and guest starred on his sister Brandy's hit series Moshe. But he quickly proved he wasn't just living in her shadow. By the late 90s and early 2000s, he was a legitimate R&B star with hits like Wait a Minute and the millennial anthem One Wish. But even as his music dominated the charts, Ray J was looking toward the future. He founded Knockout Entertainment, giving himself the kind of independence that most artists only dream of. He wasn't just a singer, he was the CEO, the producer, and the creative director of his own life. When the music industry began to shift, Ray J shifted with it, pivoting into the world of reality television. For the love of Ray J and love in hip-hop, Hollywood didn't just keep him famous, they turned his personality into a brand. He became the guy who could trend for a viral argument one day and a multi-million-dollar business deal the next. And that's where the story takes its most surprising turn. Most people expected Ray J to eventually fade into the throwback concert circuit, but instead, he conquered the tech world. He co-founded Raycon Global, a company that specialized in high-quality wireless earbuds. While the skeptics laughed, the numbers did the talking. Raycon reportedly hit $10 million in sales within its first year and eventually scaled to hundreds of millions in cumulative revenue. He followed that up with Scooty Bikes, an electric transportation line that he eventually sold in a massive multi-million-dollar deal. By the time he hit his early 40s, Ray J wasn't just an R&B singer anymore. He was a tech mogul with an estimated net worth between $14 and $20 million. He had built an empire that was meant to last for decades, which makes his current medical reality feel like a cruel twist of fate. Now at 45, that entire empire exists alongside a heart that can barely pump enough blood to keep him standing. And here is the most baffling part of the Ray J saga. Even with a diagnosis that says his heart is black and done, the hustle has not stopped. During the same Instagram live session, where he told the world he might not live past 2027, he was also announcing a massive new business venture. He revealed that his Tronix network was relaunching as a dedicated dating show platform in partnership with the Zeus network. He spent half the stream talking about his ejection fraction and the other half shouting out Zeus founder Lemmy and promoting the relaunch of For the Love of Ray J 3. He announced plans to shoot 15 new dating shows within the next 2 months. It was a staggering juxtaposition. One minute he's describing his own death timeline, And the next he's positioning his network to dominate the streaming world for the next 2 years. It's as if he's trying to outrun his own heartbeat, building a legacy at breakneck speed because he knows the clock is ticking faster than it ever has before. This relentless drive is exactly what makes the Shreveport performance so terrifying. To any medical professional, the idea of a man with 25% heart function performing an R&B set in a hot auditorium is a nightmare scenario. A heart in that condition is under constant strain just to perform basic functions like walking or talking. When you add the physical exertion of singing, moving across a stage, and the adrenaline of a live crowd, you are essentially redlining an engine that is already falling apart. The blood seen on his face, whether it was a medical symptom or a theatrical choice, served as a visceral reminder of that strain. If it was real, it could point to the kind of internal pressure that most people never have to experience. If it was fake, it shows a man so committed to the show that he's willing to play with the imagery of his own demise to keep the world's attention. Either way, it highlights the dangerous gap between who Ray J wants to be, the invincible mogul, and who he currently is, a patient in a state of active medical crisis. And let's not forget the personal stakes involved here. This isn't just about business and music. It's about a father fighting to see his children grow up. During his recent live streams, Ray J touched on his ongoing personal struggles, including a criminal protective order that has reportedly complicated his ability to see his 2 children with Princess Love. He spoke about his desire to make sure his baby mama and his kids are straight financially, even if he isn't around to see it. It adds a layer of tragic urgency to his business moves. He's not just chasing money anymore. He's chasing a sense of security for a family he might be leaving behind sooner than anyone expected. He admitted that he went too hard for too long, a confession that rings with the weight of a man who finally understands that time is the one thing his money can't buy back. He told his fans to take care of themselves, to not make the same mistakes he did, essentially turning his own downfall into a public service announcement for a generation that grew up watching him live without limits. The question that remains, and the one that is currently tearing through comment sections across the globe, is it really over for Ray J? If you look at the medical literature, a 25% ejection fraction is a serious, life-threatening condition, but it isn't always a death sentence. With absolute adherence to his 8-medication regimen, strict bed rest, and the potential help of a pacemaker or defibrillator, hearts can sometimes recover. The 2027 is a wrap prediction might have been the worst-case scenario delivered by a doctor trying to scare a rebellious patient into finally slowing down. But the problem is that Ray J doesn't know how to slow down. The man we saw in Shreveport is a man who would rather burn out on stage than fade away in a hospital bed. He thanked his fans for their prayers, and those prayers are flooding in by the thousands every single day. People want to see the comeback. They want to see the one-wish singer beat the odds one more time. But as of mid-February 2026, the distance between the medical prescriptions and Ray J's actual actions is wider than ever. He is a man caught between the empire he built and the body that can no longer sustain it, leaving us all to wonder if we are witnessing a miracle in the making or the final, tragic chapters of a life lived at the ultimate volume. The footage from Shreveport will likely be debated for years to come. Was it a cry for help, a final performance, or just another chapter in the unpredictable book of Ray J? Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. The world is rooting for a man who has given us decades of entertainment and innovation. Ray J's journey from a young star to a tech mogul and now to a man fighting for every heartbeat is a powerful reminder that health is the only true wealth we have. As he navigates this uncertain road, the prayers and support from fans across the globe continue to pour in, hoping that one wish for a full recovery finally comes true. We want to hear from you. What was your reaction to that viral Shreveport footage? Do you think Ray J can beat the odds and make a full recovery? Or is this the sign he finally needs to step away from the spotlight for good? Drop your thoughts and your prayers in the comments below, and let's keep the positive energy going for Ray and the entire Norwood family. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for the latest updates on this story as it develops. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.